I used to think I had it all figured out. On the outside, my life looked polished, almost enviable. I was 33, a corporate strategist at one of the fastest-growing firms in New York, with a fiancé who looked like he had stepped out of a GQ magazine spread, and a circle of friends who toasted champagne with me on rooftops overlooking the glittering skyline. Every day, I walked through the glass doors of our office tower in Manhattan, heels clicking against marble floors, feeling like I belonged to some exclusive world where only the boldest and smartest survived. But if I'm being honest, deep inside I was always restless, like I was standing on the edge of something fragile that could shatter if I blinked wrong. And I was right. Because everything I thought was mine, my career, my love, my future, was ripped from me in the ugliest way possible. It all started with Daniel. He wasn't just my fiancé, he was my best friend, my partner in late-night takeout sessions, my anchor when I worked 70-hour weeks. We met 5 years ago at a networking event for young professionals. He was a rising corporate attorney, sharp as a blade and devastatingly charming. I was still climbing the ranks, hungry to prove myself. He laughed at my sarcasm, I admired his ambition, and before long, our lives were fused together like 2 pages in the same book. I trusted him with everything. My secrets, my fears, my bank account passwords. When he slipped that diamond ring on my finger during a trip to Aspen, I cried, not just because I loved him but because I truly believed the universe had rewarded me. But the universe doesn't reward tricks. It seduces you with glitter before pulling the rug from under your feet. At work, I had just landed the biggest opportunity of my career, leading negotiations for a $375 million merger between my firm and a West Coast tech giant. This deal was supposed to cement my reputation in the industry. I lived, breathed, and bled for it. My days were endless phone calls, spreadsheets that blurred before my eyes, and late nights drafting contracts with coffee that tasted like ash. Still, I was proud. This was my battlefield and I was a warrior. Daniel cheered me on, or at least he pretended to. He'd rub my shoulders when I came home exhausted, pour me a glass of wine, ask about the details of the deal. At first, I thought it was endearing that he cared. But now, when I replay those moments in my head, I see how his questions were surgical, precise. He wasn't cheering me on. He was studying me. The betrayal hit like a bullet I never saw coming. It was 3 weeks before the signing when I noticed small, odd things. A missing document from my desk. An email I swore I'd drafted but couldn't find. Daniel working later than usual, brushing me off with vague excuses. I chalked it up to stress. Both of us were drowning in our careers. But then, one night, I stayed at the office until midnight, and when I got home, I smelled perfume that wasn't mine on his shirt. It was faint, floral, not my usual musky vanilla. My heart stopped, but I shoved the suspicion down. I didn't want to believe it. Denial is powerful. The truth didn't stay buried. It clawed its way into the open like rot breaking through polished wood. 2 weeks before the deal was to close, I was blindsided in a board meeting. One of our junior attorneys flagged a clause buried deep in the contract, a clause that effectively shifted control of the merged company's intellectual property to the other party. It was catastrophic. My bosses stared at me like I had personally set fire to $375 million. My stomach dropped. That clause hadn't been there in my drafts. I knew every line, every word. Someone had inserted it. The room was silent except for the sound of my own pulse. And then I saw him, Daniel, sitting at the far end of the table. He wasn't supposed to be there. He represented the other firm's legal team. My fiancé. My lover. My supposed ally. Our eyes locked, and in that split second I knew. He wasn't just cheating on me. He had been feeding them information, sabotaging me, dismantling everything I had built. The deal collapsed within days. My bosses treated me like I was toxic waste. My credibility was shredded in the industry. Nobody wanted to touch me after a failure like that. My career, the one thing I had poured my soul into, evaporated. Daniel disappeared from our apartment, leaving only a note on the counter. "I'm sorry. This is bigger than us." He didn't even have the decency to face me. Bigger than us. What the hell did that even mean? For weeks I was a ghost. I barely ate, barely slept. I stared at the ring he had given me until the diamond looked like glass. Friends tried to console me, but how do you explain betrayal so sharp it slices into your bones? It wasn't just that he cheated. It wasn't just that he destroyed my career. He made me doubt my own mind, my own instincts. He hollowed me out. But grief has a way of mutating into something else. Something darker. Somewhere in the haze of wine bottles and sleepless nights, a seed of rage sprouted inside me. And once it took root, it grew wild. I decided Daniel wasn't going to walk away unscathed. If he thought he could take my love, my career, and my future, he was wrong. I was going to make him choke on every lie, every secret, every ounce of betrayal. Revenge isn't something you just dive into. It's an art, a meticulous construction of patience and precision. I started with research. I dug into every file, every deal he had touched with his firm. I learned that the company he represented, the one that slid that poison clause into the merger, had a history of shady acquisitions. Lawsuits that disappeared, whistleblowers who vanished into silence, financial trails that didn't add up. Daniel was knee-deep in their dirt. I created a wall in my apartment. Photos, documents, strings of red yarn connecting names and numbers like some cliché crime drama. But this wasn't television. This was my life, my war. And I was prepared to go nuclear. I played the part of the broken woman well. To Daniel and anyone else watching, I was licking my wounds, drifting in obscurity. But behind closed doors, I was sharpening my knives. Literally and figuratively. I learned how to infiltrate his world again without him realizing. New social media accounts, fake networking profiles, whispers in the right ears. Information is power, and I was hoarding it like a dragon over treasure. When I finally made my move, it wasn't loud. It was surgical, precise, the way Daniel had studied me years ago. I found evidence of insider trading, proof that he had leveraged confidential information from our relationship to benefit his firm. I uncovered emails between him and his lover, one of the executives at the rival company, where they mocked me, called me naive, congratulated themselves on dismantling me. The rage that boiled in me was indescribable. But I didn't lash out. Not yet. I wanted to savor this. I fed the evidence, piece by piece, to the right places. Anonymous tips to journalists, discreet packages to regulatory agencies. I watched as cracks began to form in their pristine empire. Stock prices dipped. Investigations opened. Executives panicked. Daniel looked less polished in public appearances. His jaw tight, his smile forced. But the real climax, the moment I had starved myself for, came at a gala. 6 months after my downfall, the rival firm hosted a lavish event in Manhattan, celebrating their continued success. Daniel was there, arm in arm with his new lover, the same executive who had replaced me in more ways than one. I dressed in a sleek black gown, slipped into the event like I belonged. Nobody questioned me. In that world, confidence is the only ticket you need. I watched them from across the room, sipping champagne I could barely taste. And then it happened. The news broke, live on the massive screens at the event. Federal charges filed, assets frozen, resignations demanded. The room fell into chaos. Daniel's face went pale. His lover's hand slipped from his arm, and for the first time since he betrayed me, I saw fear in his eyes. He spotted me in the crowd. Our gazes locked again, just like in that boardroom months ago. But this time I wasn't the broken woman. I was the executioner. I raised my glass to him, a silent toast to his destruction, and walked away as the world he built on lies collapsed behind me. You'd think that moment would bring peace, that the hollow ache in my chest would finally dissolve. For a while it did. I felt powerful, untouchable. I had ripped him apart without ever touching him. But late at night, when the city quieted and I was left alone with my thoughts, a different kind of emptiness settled in. Because here's the truth they don't tell you about revenge. It doesn't rebuild what was lost. It doesn't erase the nights you cried yourself to sleep or the trust that was shattered. It just leaves you standing in the wreckage, holding the ashes of what you burned. Daniel is gone, his career destroyed. His name a stain in the industry. And me. I'm still here, still breathing, still fighting. But sometimes I wonder if, in destroying him, I also destroyed the part of myself that once believed in love, in loyalty, in anything pure. So I'll ask you, was it worth it? Was the revenge sweeter than the pain? Or did it just prove that when someone cuts you deep enough, you'll do anything to make them bleed too, even if it means bleeding yourself? I don't have the answer. All I know is this. I may have lost my career, my fiancé, my innocence. But I gained something else. A clarity that the world is a battlefield, and only those willing to play dirty survive. And me. I survived.